let's start with that Sunday Night Football game. I feel like that's the best way to start off this show because it's fresh in everybody's mind. And it was with two teams that have, playoff and Super Bowl aspirations in the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. Ravens take care of business, 35-10 in this one. Just, I don't want to say that it looked like it was out of reach the whole time for the Bills because there was a little bit of time in there where you went, okay, is Buffalo going to make some magic happen here? But on the scoreboard, it looks pretty one-sided, and that's because, you had a lot of really good players playing for Baltimore. So let's look at the top 5 players for the Ravens from last night. Kyle Van Noy at the very top of the list, the veteran, 93.9 overall grade in this game. Edge rusher Odafe right behind him as well, so the defensive line really standing up. 89.1. Fullback Patrick Ricard, love to get a fullback here early on in the show. 83.0. They were running the ball really good last night, so that's no surprise there. Speaking of running backs, Derrick Henry right there at number 4, 81.5. And then cornerback Nate Wiggins having a hell of a rookie season already so far, 4 games in with an 80.9. Quarterback Lamar Jackson would have been in that top 5, but we like to separate those guys to make sure we shout them out anyways. 88.8 last night. And then when we flip sides to the Buffalo Bills, the grades, as you would expect, not as high. Guard David Edwards with a 76.5 at the very top of the list. Center Connor McGovern with a 68.6. Wide receiver Keon Coleman, a 67.8. Cornerback Rasul Douglas, a 66.6. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir with a 66.1. And then Josh Allen right behind that with a 66.0. Dalton, as we often do for these game previews, we'll start with the stat that told the story in this result. What do you got from this?
I got to be honest with you. I think you should go first on this one because yours is the much more obvious one,
okay.
And I'll just build right off of it. I think to say anything but what you have here first would be kind of weird. It's the obvious is the obvious.
Okay, all right. So we can start with mine because, while you were grinding the All-22 tape, I was getting my notes in a little bit earlier, so I had.
You win. So it's just I don't want to copy it either. No, that's rude.
That's fine. We could play off each other here and have a good conversation about it. It was the Ravens' run game efficiency, right? This is exactly what this team wants to do, and last night they did it. This could not have been a worse script for the Buffalo Bills and exactly what they wanted to do in this game. Not only were they on the road and you try to make the team a little bit comfortable, you try to put a little bit of pressure on the home team when you're coming in as the road dogs here, but there was just nothing that the Bills were going to do when the Ravens are running the way that they were last night. The run game efficiency, those are the stats that told the story in my opinion. 34 rushing attempts to just 18 passing attempts. That's what this team wants to do. They want to run it down your face. That's what they want to do here. Most rushing attempts in the league this week at 34, yet also the highest yards per carry average. So normally it's one or the other, right? Normally it's okay, we're really emphasizing the ground and pound here. We're going to have a lot of different carries, but as you know, the explosives, especially in the run game, they're often few and far between. So the average yards per carry average is normally lower when you are running the ball as much. But last night, the Ravens got the volume and they got the explosiveness, leading in both of those categories in attempts and yards per carry. Ravens pass blocking grade, 92.7 as a team. I wanted to shout that out as well because when you are running the ball as well as the Ravens were, and this goes into sort of what I said at the beginning, it was the worst script possible for the Bills because when the Ravens' very first play of the game, it was Derrick Henry, boom, taking off, long touchdown run. Now all of a sudden you got to be on your heels. Now all of a sudden you've got to think, I have to defend the run first, right? Not only are they up on the scoreboard, not only is it their identity, we have to make sure that we don't get gashed like that again. Well, they often say that what's the best way to sometimes mitigate pressure on your offensive line? Well, it's running the football. And it's not running the football just because. It's because of the philosophy. It's the back and forth. It's the fact that if you are running the football really well, the other team's defensive line cannot just pin their ears back and tee off on you and get after the quarterback. That's why we see a great complementary football effort from the Ravens, where their pass blocking grade is also incredibly high because they established the run the way that they wanted to. Only one pressure allowed last night from the Ravens offensive line when they were in pass blocking. But to me, like you said, that was the stat that told the story last night.
You're absolutely right. My most impressive guy, I'll get back to my stat that tells the story, but it has to be Derrick Henry, right? I mean, just the breakout game for him as a Raven, 24 carries, 199 yards, 2 total touchdowns, 5 missed tackles, 6 explosive runs like you just mentioned, and I think this is where this team wants to live, right? They want to run it, maybe not 2-to-1 run to pass every week, but the balance is where they're going to live, right? You really only have one legitimate proven wide receiver in Zay Flowers. You've got 2 good tight tight ends, but they want to get downhill. They've been the best rushing team in the league since Lamar Jackson was drafted. They're continuing that. This is why they got Derrick Henry, to look like this, right? And this is the best version of them, right? And I like that you mentioned the explosives too, because now I'll backtrack to my stack that tells a story other than everything you just said about the run game, because that was the story, and that's going to be the story for the Ravens every week. You want to take a team, Bill Belichick always talked about taking another team's best asset away from them, right? And for the Ravens, it's the run game, and the Bills didn't do that. Well, they did take it away from the Bills on defense. And what the Bills want to do, the one way that they could have got back into the game is to create explosive plays for themselves, right? They have Josh Allen, you've got a bunch of guys that can make plays, you've got a good run game, you can do all these things. They just didn't allow the Bills to do that. In the first half, the Bills did not have a single play that went for 10 or more yards. Not after the catch, not before the catch, not a single play that went for 10 or more yards. From what I could find, that was in the first half. They had a few in the second half, like you mentioned. That was the first time the Bills have gone an entire first half in PFF history without a play that went 10 or more yards. And we've been doing this since 2006. 31 plays, a 53.4 offensive grade in the first half, and not a single play that went 10 yards. They mixed coverage as well. They matched the personnel well. When the Bills went multiple tight ends, you saw the Ravens adjust and get down and single high and load 8 in the box, because it's going to be either A, running the ball right down your throat, or B, like play action with like a one-man route. That's kind of it's very simple when you have 2 and 3 tight ends on the field, or the Bills, sometimes Joe Brady likes to use a 6 offensive lineman. The Ravens did a great job matching personnel. When they got spread out, they went fine. Too high, we'll spread out with you. We're just not letting you get anything over the top. And look, it works not just for Josh Allen, but a lot of times with any elite quarterback, make the other guys beat you. That they didn't let Josh Allen beat them. And it's not that Josh Allen had a million turnovers or anything like that in this game, but Josh Allen throwing 5-yard curls is a win for the defense.
Right.
You don't want the arm killing you. You don't want to spread out. When they spread out and get 4 or 5 wide on you, you don't want to go in man coverage, because then he'll start running. So they just did a great job matching personnel, mixing coverages, knowing what they wanted to do. And even though it was like a conservative game from Josh Allen, and it wasn't the high turnover game that people assume is coming when Josh Allen has a bad game, he didn't have a bad game. It's just that the Ravens took away his ability to take over the game. And you saw it in the first half. I mean, to not have a single play go for 10 yards in an entire half of football, especially when Josh Allen's the quarterback, is incredible. So the defense did have just as big a hand in this blowout, especially early, as the offense did.
Yeah, and I just think, again, going back to what we were talking about at the very top, what I brought up, the script was perfect for this to be a terrible Buffalo Bills game, right? And even when you look at the overall offensive emphasis of what the Ravens wanted to do, it just could not have started out any worse for the Bills, because not only are they going through injuries, which was, that's my most disappointing, is the guys who were having to fill in because of injuries, they just didn't play well last night. And it's hard to be too hard on them, but you're just a little disappointed because you wanted those guys to play a little bit better. There's a reason why they're not starters right now. I understand, Cam Lewis, Bale Inspector, which, by the way, that's like a Game of Thrones name if I've ever heard one. It's just, those guys just struggled last night. Dorian Williams struggled a little bit with Bernard and Matt Milano out, and so it was just hard for those guys who were really filling in, especially because we praise the Buffalo Bills for what they were able to do to the Miami Dolphins and the Jacksonville Jaguars over the last 2 weeks, playing deeper coverages, making you throw the ball sort of underneath. Well, that's exactly what the Ravens wanted to do. They want to be a team that runs the ball, which they were able to do right off the bat. But then when it came to how do you attack these 2 high coverages, they're very comfortable throwing the ball underneath. Lamar Jackson, of the 4 games the Ravens have played, these last 2 games, the games in which they have looked the best, the win against the Cowboys and then the win last night, they've been Lamar Jackson's lowest average depth of target. Now, I'm not saying that Lamar can't throw, but I am saying that what the Bills dare you to do isn't really daring for what this Lamar Jackson offense wants to do. They want to run the ball. They want to be dual threat in the backfield, shoot multi-threat in the backfield, not just even with 2 guys who could be rushers, but they get wide receivers involved, the fullback involved as well. And they're very comfortable giving the ball to their wide receivers in space and saying, go get yards after the catch, go make plays. So, unfortunately, what the Bills are, philosophically, as a defense, the injuries that they had, and then the beginning of the game script all went very hard against them, where if you play this game 10 times, this is probably the worst result for the Bills that you will get in those 10 games. It just happened to play out like that last night. So I said the Bills were one of my disappointing, one of my most impressive. Before we get to your disappointing, then we move on. Nate Wiggins.
Love him.
Really impressed by what Nate Wiggins is doing so far early on in the season. 88.2 coverage grade last night. Only 1 reception allowed for 5 yards. Had 2 dropped interceptions. One was more difficult than the other, but he also had 2 forced incompletions. One of them was the dropped interception, but the other one was a really good play in the end zone. So Wiggins, there was a lot of talk of, is he too skinny to play in the NFL? Is he going to get pushed around? One thing's for sure, he's one hell of an athlete. He's making sure that he's getting in front of the football. So hats off to Nate Wiggins as well. But last one, because you said most impressive was Derrick Henry.
Yep.
Most disappointing.
Actually, a healthy guy in the Bills' front 7 to me that has to start playing better is Ed Oliver. 50.8 overall grade last night. Just 1 cleanup pressure and 16 opportunities. And so far this year, a 49.3 run defense grade that I believe is outside the top 50 of defensive tackles right now. They're hurt at linebacker. They're pretty good off the edge, obviously, with Rousseau. Von Miller playing a part-time role. Epinesa is pretty good, but they really need Ed Oliver to be a more dominant interior presence for them, and he wasn't that last night.